you want to cultivate your own community, and you want to take people from these platforms and make them fans of your work, bring them into your community, bring them into your platform. Because I saw something today where someone was talking about, you can get your YouTube channel can get deleted. They can ban your Twitter.
Yep.
They can take your
Yes,
videos
sir.
off TikTok, but they can't steal your platform. And so in addition to these social sites, that's a great point, DK. Finding a way to creating a website or an email list, or finding a way to own your own channel and bring your audience into that channel.
NL Publishing Service Academy proudly presents Listen Up, I Got a Story to Tell podcast with literary success consultant DK Walker, sharing with you writing tips, marketing ideas, publishing information, and inspiring interviews for your author journey. So, without further ado, let's get right into it with DK Walker.
Hey, I'm DK Walker, and this is Listen Up, at a Story to Tell podcast. Today, I am joined by Cade. Now, look, a lot of authors struggle with writing impactful sentence. I have with me today in my opinion, like, what do I know? But in my opinion, this guy is a bleeping genius when it comes to structuring sentences that makes a huge impact to your readers. Cade, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was a very generous introduction there. A genius. I don't know if I've ever been labeled a genius before, but I hope in this podcast I can live up to half of how you've hyped me here. But thank you, DK. Your resources is a valuable one for authors as well. And I think you talked a little bit about, actually before we started recording, that there's the interior of the book and then there's the exterior, and they both have to work together. My day job is marketing right now. And so I understand, one, the product has to be great, but also the marketing as well in order to reach the widest audience that you can. So thank you for this.
No thanks needed. I do appreciate you. And it was not me necessarily a hype job, because I actually met you on TikTok, right? And I went down your
Yep.
rabbit hole, and I'm like, is anybody really paying this guy attention to the level that needs to be paying attention? And you were giving away so much information for freaking free. So if you're before we get the podcast started, tell people your handle on TikTok, because they need to follow you. If you're a struggling author and you just can't piece it together, do the first step in getting it right. Follow my man Cade. So please give us your handle on TikTok, and then we'll get into the interview.
Yeah, my handle on TikTok is at Write Perfect Sentences. And like DK said, I'm giving away tips and tricks on how to write the quote unquote perfect sentence. And it's just short little lessons that you can immediately take and apply and hope make your writing that much better, or elevate your writing to a certain point, which is to be published.
Okay. I guess my first question to you, sir, is how did you get to where you at today?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I have your kind of stereotypical kind of writer story where I grew up loving books. I grew up on the bus in fifth grade writing down my first novel. So I always knew that I wanted to be a writer and that my passion for books was something I wanted to pursue. And so I did 8 years of schooling. So I did my undergrad and got my master's. It was a 4-year master's degree, and I studied creative writing fiction. And in that time, I was very fortunate to cross paths with a startup called Hooked, which was this chat fiction app that was getting started. And it allowed me to write a bunch of stories and trial a bunch of concepts and ideas. And I was lucky enough to get published a bunch of times, but I was luckier to be able to draft 400 or 500 stories where I learned, hey, this is I don't want to say the right and the wrong way to write, but here's how to write effectively. Here's how to write an effective sentence. And maybe here's this story got rejected. Why did it get rejected? Let me look at it and let me compare it to those that got accepted. And so I could start to single out patterns and different things that I would take with the next story. And so just years of schooling, years of publishing, years of writing, and then teaching, honestly, which to me is the highest form of learning. I am where I am now, which is, hey, I've studied this for 8+ years. When I say this, sentences and how they can impact a reader. And I had great teachers, and now I want to distill all that information and give it to you. So that's where I'm at now.
And I'm pretty sure that coupled with a passion I haven't seen before. I behind the scenes in the chats in TikTok, I introduced you to a friend of mine by the name of Jennifer Carr. Both of you
Yeah.
share the same passion. Hers is for actual constructing characters, whereas yours is on the level of
Mm,
constructing sentences. And I cannot wait for both of y'all to hook up. I think it's going to be. I'll be sitting front row with
yeah.
popcorn and taking notes when that podcast does
Awesome.
come together. You alluded earlier that your job is marketing, and self-published
Mm.
authors struggle mightily with marketing. Any advice in that aspect?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Oh, excuse me, and I'm asking for myself as well. So most times I'm asking the question. It's not only for the listening audience. I am asking for me too.
yeah. I marketing is hard because especially as an author, I mean, I guess it's like most products nowadays or most marketing nowadays is like we're overloaded with all kinds of marketing message, with all kinds of, hey, look at me, look at this book, look at this product. I use TikTok, but TikTok it's not something that you sit with one thing for a while and really digest. And as an author selling a book, how do you get your book out in front of people and then convince people to go and read it and take time out of the day to do all that? Being said, I empathize with how hard it can be. I think, man, I think honestly, the best things that self-published authors can do, and this is, I'm even giving myself this advice because I made a New Year's resolution to do this, is just show up and show up consistently, just like you do
Mm,
for your book, just like you do, like you hopefully for your writing habit, where you, hey, I don't wait for the muse. I show up and I sit down and I write, and that's how I get the work done. When it comes to marketing, a lot of it's just consistency and persistence. I could talk about, and that's how honestly when I talk about my day job, like at my company, I really don't know what path I should go down until I just jump in and try it. Just jump in and do it, and what's going to work. I could give you marketing principles. You got to find your ideal audience, and you got to find what
mhm.
they like, and you got to, maybe here's a structure or framework you could play with, but until you try it for yourself, you're not really sure what's going to work, what's not going to work. So I would say just show up and put your brand out there. Don't be afraid to put your brand out there. And over time you'll learn, hey, this video really worked, or this channel really worked, or this message seems to resonate. I got two people to buy my book when I was on Reddit and followed another indie author, and we celebrated together. So it's just consistency. I think showing up consistently. If you're going to do organic route, now not all of us has the means to do a paid route.
Right,
Like
right.
I don't. So to me, it's just every day I'm going to show up and I'm going to try to be better than I was yesterday. What worked yesterday? How can I be better at it?
Learn how to write faster, conquer writer's block, and tell a story your readers will love. In less than 1 month, writing only 3 pages daily, you can go from book idea to manuscript using the unfair writing advantage. Most authors take 8 months on average to write just 1 book. But in a fraction of that time, you will learn how to craft a book your readers will love and not be hunched over your laptop days on end to do so. Just go to www.theunfairwritingadvantage.com to see what has the self-publishing industry buzzing. Now back to the podcast.
Okay, I agree 1,000% with the consistency aspect. So let me pick your brain, and I know I'm
Yeah.
assuming, and please correct me if I'm wrong. This is not necessarily your expertise as far as marketing books, but this is
Yeah.
where I'm at with this. Right, it's easier for authors to convert people that's looking for what they have instead of being on a platform that's not designed to showcase what they have. And this is what I mean by that. If you go into any search engine, they have, I forget, extensions that shows you like keywords have been searched how many times during the day, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer to have my own platform where I am searched and sought after and cultivate my tribe there
Mm-hmm.
instead of, because of being on social media platforms. And here's a couple of reasons why. First of all, I'm a slave to the algorithm, hashtags, etc. And don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
you have to have a presence there as well. But to me, in my experience, it's harder to convert a person that's on these platforms that's there for entertainment, no matter if I'm writing
Right.
a fiction book or not. Now, if I was to like make my base besides my website on YouTube, which is an SEO, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also on Pinterest, which is an SEO. people are actively looking for those things, for your books there. And it's easier to convert them to sell because they're looking for what you have instead of, okay, I'm on TikTok, I'm catching the latest trend, and hopefully, besides how many likes, how many shares, how many saves, that leads to a conversion somewhere. That's where I'm at with the marketing aspect.
Yeah.
Now I don't know what I'm gonna do with that, but something has to come with that. In its theory, but I have to put that into practice.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. Yeah. And I agree with you there. You want to cultivate your own community, and you want to take people from these platforms and make them fans of your work, bring them into your community, bring them into your platform. Because, yeah, I saw something today where someone was talking about you can get your YouTube channel can get deleted. They can ban your Twitter.
Yep.
They can take your
Yes, sir.
videos off TikTok, but they can't steal your platform. And so, in addition to these social sites, that's a great point, DK. Yeah, I finding a way to creating a website or an email list, or finding a way to own your own channel and bring your audience into that channel. I think
You're
that's where
right.
you're making most of your money. Huh?
You have to have digital real estate. Without digital real
Mhm.
estate, I don't care. You can be the most popular TikToker. You can kill it on IG.
Yeah.
But once again, I forget what day it was, but I know it was on a Monday when Facebook went down and people literally lost their minds because they had nothing to do. Right. And then so
Right.
the people that had the email list and the SMS, the number so they can text, they thrived. They made the most
Yeah.
money during that time for the simple doggone fact it was like, okay, cool. We know that Facebook is down. So I can go ahead. I have the attention now, right?
Yeah.
Because I have my own digital real estate. My next question for you, sir, is how do you make your information digestible without intimidating authors that know they need what you offer, but may be intimidated because they think there's so much work entailed with it?
Yeah. That's a great question. And it's a balance I'm trying to strike. I think for me, because a lot of the sentence courses that I took, it was mainly theory, and there was a lot of information to try to wrap your head around. And what I try to do is just give you one simple principle, and then out of that principle, one takeaway that you can immediately apply. And I think that's every time I stray away from that, I get confused. I try to watch it back. So I try to keep it simple I don't think it's simple. I think the principles are basic, but just give you one thing to really reflect on, and then one way you can take and apply it to your work immediately.
Okay. I was on your TikToks and you gave an example alluding to the ladder rung and you were describing an iPhone. Do
Yeah.
you remember that? If you don't mind, could you share that? And then I want to get into that.
Sure. Yeah. So what I was talking about was the ladder of abstraction. So it really has to do, there's three ways you can dramatically alter the impact and meaning of your sentences. And one of those ways is through word choice. And I depict it as saying it's a vertical axis and word choices. And you can go up the axis, so up the ladder, basically, like it has rungs. You go up the ladder and you get into more abstract words within your sentence, or you can go down the ladder and you can get more specific and include more specific words in your sentence. So when I say that, you could be describing an iPhone and you could talk about the rose gold iPhone 15. That's like the most specific you could, let's say theoretically you could be. Or you could go up the ladder and you say, I picked up my phone or my technology. As abstract category as a phone can be, that's the top of vertical axis. And that's how you can move up and down that axis. And each rung alters the meaning of the sentence. Each rung impacts the audience in a different way. Not to go too far down the rabbit hole here, but for just to give you an example, there was one story that I wrote where I was writing the most, labeling everything the most specific they could be, just because I thought the more descriptive, the better. And I had one of my teachers or one of my mentors say, "Why are you talking about a Ford or a Ford truck or F-150? Why don't you just say, hey, I drove in my truck?" It just draws attention to itself how specific it is. So you have to make sure like the situation calls for how specific or
Mm,
abstract you need to be. And in that situation, I was being too specific and need to dial it back up. So
okay.
that's what I talk about when I talk about the ladder of abstraction.
Got you. Would that determine, say, if you had a character going back to the actual phone itself, and say that character, make him a male, make him pretentious, make him well to do. And so
Yeah.
to add substance to his character, he would
Hmm.
describe that phone with the
Absolutely.
specifics. But you would take another character that would just look at a phone as a phone. Although he may have the latest phone, he doesn't value it as much as the guy that's pretentious. Would you agree?
Writing your manuscript has been hard enough, so let NL Publishing Service Academy make self-publishing your book easy as possible. From beautifully designed full and ebook covers to uniquely done typesetting and formatting, our goal is to professionally enhance your manuscripts and book covers to give your readers the best reading experience possible. Need marketing tips, tactics, and strategies? We can help you with that. How about branding and broadening the reach of your author platform? Yep, we can help you with that too. So no matter what your self-publishing needs are, NL Publishing Service Academy has you covered. Just head over to www.nlpublishingservices.com for whatever your self-publishing needs are. And now back to the podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the level of specificity, what you're getting at there says a lot about the character or the narrator or whoever's speaking. Yeah, that pretentious guy will say, "Hey, I've got the latest X10." Yeah, that's a great, yep.
And that will
It
play
ties back
into,
to character.
yes, sir, yes, that will play into, and that will give him more substance. And then you either like or hate him because of his arrogance. Right.
Yep,
Definitely
absolutely.
got you. Definitely got you.
Absolutely.
Where do you see, because writing itself, or just authors, pardon me, in general, because we have so much freedom now, we're no longer held hostage by the gatekeepers, unless you consider Amazon to be a gatekeeper. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
What do you see authors going to in the next 5 years with as much freedom as they have? I read an article where they was talking about authors are struggling selling books, and I thought about it. I don't know if the sales of books are down. I just think
Hmm.
that you have more authors putting books out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I honestly. What is your take on that?
That's really interesting. So yeah, I think, it's kind of like the music in any creative industry now. There's a million ways that which you can publish and a million ways in which you can get your stories out there. So there's a lot of noise, right? Which is great. And there's pros and cons. So before it was like the big five publishers were the gatekeepers. And unless you like printed all the books yourself and handed them out, like you had to go through those gatekeepers to really have any distribution. Well, now you could publish your stories on TikTok, you could publish your stories, like you could set up your own website and kind of publish that way, which is good because a lot more stories are being published, but that means that there's a lot more noise in the market. So in the future, I think that's just gonna, in now with kind of the introduction of AI, so like with
Mm,
ChatGPT and how that's going to continue to evolve. I read an article from a director that I admire that talks about 2023 is going to be the year of the conductor, and he was alluding to the fact that one day, and he's talking about movies in general, but like one day somebody could just have a vision for a movie and fully realize it without, he could write the script with AI, create the soundtrack with AI, maybe
yes.
even have like actors through AI, and basically
Yep.
they're just conducting each part, and now it's a full length movie, and then they share it. It's like you
It's
won't.
scary times.
It's scary
It's
times. So
scary.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
scary times, and I think that's where it's going ultimately. And I think like the gates will continue to come down, and there'll be more and more noise, but it's a good and bad thing because now it's that vying for people's attention. Like, how do you sell books with all that noise going on?
And I alluded to that to come back to this question. I think how people create a noise barrier, lack of better words, is by doing what you teach. Because
Mm,
substance wins, cream rises to the top. I don't care if you got the greatest AI writing the, like
yeah.
without emotion. It's just a computer actually grabbing stuff off the web, right? Supercomputer grabbing stuff off the web, putting together, compiling it under the parameters that you asked the question or you asked it to write. Not a problem. What's
Yep.
void from that is the emotional aspect that the authors bring. You, my
Absolutely.
friend, you certified genius. I said it. I stand on it. I stamped. You, now, all jokes aside, right? Like, I want you to reference this podcast here today. What you do and what my friend Jennifer does. What y'all do, y'all going to be the separators, because y'all
Mm,
still asking the authors to remember who they are, and keep the human element within writing books, and doing it in such a way that the readers can't help but, I need to read more of that author, because
mm.
by you, your sentence structures are perfect, but it's hitting them emotionally. And once you have a reader vested emotionally, they are a fan for life. We like and love the things that we do because we are emotionally invested in them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad that you landed there. It's like what's going to matter in the end and how you're going to stand out is how ultimately how good is your story? How great is your product? Not to commoditize stories, but like how impactful is it toward the audience that it needs to be impactful toward? And is it infused with that emotion? Do we fall in love with the characters? Do we fall in love with the story itself or with the sentences? Do the sentences lead us from one to the next and the next? That's when in a world full of noise that there's still going to be great stories that we gravitate toward. So how do you position yourself to write that great story and make sure it is what your audience wants ultimately?
Okay. Quick question. How long does it take you with what you know? How long does it take you to go from idea to executed book?
Oof. Yeah, that's a great question because I'm in the middle of drafting a story right now and
Okay.
it feels way off. I think, I mean, it varies from story to story. Some stories just, at least for me, come more naturally than others. Some stories like come through me with more velocity than others. Some stories I have to finesse a little bit more than others. And it depends if I have a writing deadline or if I don't. And if I have a writing deadline, I have to reach a point where I say, this is good enough. I'm going to let it live into the world or go into the world. But my passion projects, the ones that I'm not commissioned for or paid for, I sit with for a while and I tweak. And this tweaking could take years or it could take, I could finish it from draft. I finish a first draft, second edit, revise, and it's just a year has passed or two. Yeah, that's that. It depends
Okay.
on the project. Yeah, it depends on the project.
Got not a problem. So this is where I'm at with that when it comes to writing in regards to me personally. I'm from the school of reverse engineering, right? I'll get a great
Mm,
idea, right? And it'll hit me, boom. I'm not going to act on it because thinkers have great ideas. They come like running water there, right? But I don't
mm-hmm.
act upon it until I can see the end. And so
Wow,
once
that's
I see
interesting.
the
Yeah.
end, reverse engineer, like I need to know where this story is going to. I'm not going to write it
Mm,
backwards per se,
mm,
but I
mm.
need to know the outcome. The outcome has to match my beginning. And then
Interesting. Yeah.
my job from there is to fill the story up between the two anchors, which is the in the beginning of the book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I don't want it because I learned that through trial and error. There have been so many times I would get a great idea and I'm all gung ho and I'm just hunting and pecking, hunting and pecking, hunting and pecking.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking like, how does this bleep end? I
Yeah.
had nothing for it, and I would force it and force it, and then when I would read it in its totality, oh, this sucks, and it
Yeah.
sucked because I didn't take that thought, I didn't take that great idea and see it to its conclusion.
Mm, mm,
And for me,
mm.
that's once you get to know me, right? I am king hack, king cheat. Well, what's the hack? What's the cheat? What's the workaround? And I don't mean that to not do the work. I just think you got to work smarter, not harder, because you have so much going on in life.
Yeah.
How can I get to the final destination without working as hard? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And so are you, after you have those two anchors, do you then plot the rest out or do you pants in between to get to the
Oh,
end?
I'm like part of my language. One cheek in, one cheek out. I pants one cheek,
Yeah.
right? For me, it's a feel. But what
Mm,
happens is I am constantly working on my stories in my head. As crazy as that may
mm.
sound, like
No,
I'll be at work and
you're a
my
writer.
coworker look at me like,
Yeah.
like, why are you talking to yourself? Why are you mumbling? And I'm looking like,
Yeah.
you interrupting a great story here, right?
Yeah.
I could be doing watching TV or playing a video. I am not there mentally. I'm actually
Yeah.
working on my story. And once I got enough of it, then I'll get to my computer and I'm off to the races. But I have
Yeah.
to have those 2 points of reference, and then I have to build up enough between those two before I know I got something that I will see to completion.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I like that. One cheek in, one cheek out. Because I would say for me, I've tried both. I've tried pantsing, I've tried plotting. With plotting, I am too, if you've seen any of my videos, I think really critically about sentences. So if I plot and it's in my head, then that's the direction I have to go. I'm not generous with myself. Pants, same with you. If I just have a seed of an idea, I'll start, but then I'll get lost. I still want the story to surprise me, so plotting doesn't work great for
Right.
me. And
Oh,
then,
great point.
but yeah, but because if it surprises me, then it'll surprise the audience. That's what I've learned.
Exactly, right? Like I have
Well,
to. I'm so sorry
yeah,
to cut you off.
no,
I
you're
have
good.
to be moved. If I'm not moved,
Hmm.
then I can expect my reader to be moved. I don't care what. Like, okay, this is very old. I'm pretty sure I read it somewhere, right? If you write something that's boring, best believe that your reader is going to read it boring.
Absolutely,
But if what
absolutely.
you're writing excites you, even in the chapters that just are connected chapters, like it's just moving the
Yeah.
story along. It's not really a lot of action, but if you
Hmm.
still make that dialogue or whatever it is in those connected chapters exciting, you have
Hmm.
something that sells itself. You just need to put it
Hmm.
out there and put it out there, let people know, and then eventually it will sell itself because it becomes that good because it moved you.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. No, I have to feel that, like you're saying, in order to make the story work. I'll have a seed of an idea and I'll run with it in my mind to figure out, okay, where is this headed? And once I understand where it's headed, then I feel my way to wherever that heading or the end is,
Right,
letting it
right.
surprise me along the way. And there are other
Ex-
things that come up that, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that, which may alter the ending, but or alter it a little bit. But me, and then I'm like, okay, now I got to go. Like, I'm thinking of my most recent work where I've reached the midpoint and there's this kind of major revelation that's happening. I'm like, ooh, I need to go back and foreshadow it a little bit better in the
Okay.
beginning. And so I'll walk back and say, okay, what if this object was here, or this person is mainly given away by a computer and a USB, or but like swipes the USB off their table and puts it in their drawer. Like these different things that like details that
Mm-hmm.
that a savvy reader, when they reach that point, will look back and say, oh, that's what that meant. And so, but it surprised me. And so I have to go back. So yes, I'm somewhere one cheek in, one cheek out is where I am too. Yeah.
One of us need to coin that phrase. Like one,
There it
like that
is.
needs to be a
TM.
T-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. To say the least. And how important do you think it is for a reader to actually read to be a good author?
Oh, it's non-negotiable. I mean, I
Okay, all right.
non-negotiable. I
Non-negotiable.
think, yeah, I think you should. I mean, uh, well, maybe I don't want to impose my experience on anyone
No, no,
else,
no, no,
but
no. No, 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 no. But by all means.
I think for me, if for me personally, if I'm not reading work, no matter what that work is, then I'm not properly learning, to be honest. Because it's when I, and maybe it's more inspiration, and it is learning in and of itself. Because there's like this formal learning, which is you buy a course and you learn, hey, this is in theory, here's a principle, here's some examples, now go do it. And then you read a book and you're stuck on this one thing, or you're reading something, you're like, oh wow, I am amazed at how they constructed that sentence. How did they do that? And you
Okay.
start to
Right.
dissect it and you're like inspired and you're like, I want to go try to apply that to my writing. It was so cool how they did that. Go
Got you.
ahead, you're gonna ask a question. Yeah.
Not a problem. So I agree, but to only a bit. And here's the reason why.
Okay.
I'm a firm stickler in everything is story. When I say everything, I'm not talking about some
Mm,
things. I'm not talking about a
yeah.
few things. When I say everything is story, everything, the commercials that we watch, TV shows
Yeah.
that we watch, the interaction that we have amongst each other, this right here is a story. Yeah, the way
Yeah.
that you interact with your loved ones, with your friends, all that is story. I think reading needs to be done by an author to far as structure, far as temperament, things of that nature, right? But
Hmm.
you can actually pull inspiration or great storytelling as long as you're paying attention to what you're taking in. Case in point, I had a villain. Now, this villain, when I say was the lowest of the low, like when I say a piece of crap, this guy here, Jesus, I'm like Jesus Christ would kill him. This is how bad this guy was. And I'm not even talking about Satan. I'm not, right? But he was just on this warpath of doing the most wrong stuff that, and I'm like, but I wasn't, it was without reason. He
Mm,
was just, I got to a point I stopped because I'm like, I can't keep taking him down this rabbit hole of just being destructive
mm,
without the reason of why he's doing it. This is the reasoning is what's going to make sympathetic. The reason that we
mm.
love the villains because they have reason that plausible reason. Okay, I can believe or I understand. I don't agree
Yeah.
why you're doing, but I
Yep.
understand. Long story
Absolutely.
short, on the Rock, on the Rose of Rock. Long story longer. That was Denzel. Long story longer. I go see the Avengers Endgame. Like I am the
Yeah.
biggest Thanos fan known to man. And as
Yeah.
I'm watching the Avengers Endgame, the reason came from my character that was the villain, right? So Thanos was doing that wasn't his reason. He killed his daughter in the end game. He threw off the cliff. The movie's old, so that's not a spoiler, right? I
Mm-hmm.
immediately left the theater, got back home, and now the villain reason was he just wanted to reunite his family because his wife had divorced him and moved on and took his daughter. And I was like, okay, now the daughter is a central piece in why he's terrorizing everybody in the book, right? Now you may not
Mm.
agree with his antics, but like, how far would you
You
go for your
understand.
child? And so
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that, yeah, you gotta read. You have to get the nuances, not a problem. But if you're just paying attention to any, you get story from everything.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree with you there. You talked a little bit about beforehand how I had done a podcast a few years back, and I was interviewing Andrew Milan, who's a prolific short story writer and professor in Kansas, and he was talking about how, as an author, it's a must that one, you read, but two, read everything. And I think it gets back to what you're saying of be immersed in everything: science, mathematics,
Yes, sir.
English, story. Pay attention. I think it's just being mindful,
Be in the moment.
because being in the moment, because you don't know when what's going to trigger that next kind of idea for you in your novel or in your story. And I've had moments like that too, where it's, if you're in the moment, story is everywhere, and it helps us craft more well-rounded characters, more realistic world, more everything. It makes us more well-rounded people, more well-rounded stories as a result, I think. So yeah, that's a great point. It's be mindful, not just don't not be mindful, but yeah, be mindful
Well
of
said. Stephen King, and it's crazy. Like I love TikTok because I've got so much information on TikTok of all places, right? You can go figure. But watch the clip with Stephen King and he described his writing process. He was like, I write 6 hours a day, and by the end of those 6 hours, I got 6 pages. And people would think, like, how in the world all you got is 6 pages in 6 hours? And he
Mm,
went on to say that in those 6 hours, he makes sure that those pages are clean. So the editor has less to do. So do you believe that? And the reason I'm alluding to this, because I see so many authors, they like, I have this word count to make today. And after a while, because you're so gung ho on hitting that number, now just like in sports, you're stat stuffing. You're not
yeah.
writing for the sake of moving your story along. You just in your mind have to 5,000 words today. Okay, but what about the story? When did it should always be about the story and not about the word count per se. It's a nice goal to have as long as that
Mhm.
goes in alignment with moving the story along.
Yeah. 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 I think I've done both, I guess,
Okay.
where I've said, I'm going to write a page a day. I had to do that just to get into a writing habit. And I've done, well, I'm going to write for an hour or two a day. I wish I had 6 hours to write a day, but I got to pay the bills somehow,
Oh
I guess.
Jesus, you and me both.
That would be great. That's the goal. But I've found, for me personally, and which is one, when it comes to a writing process, like giving myself time to write instead of a word count or a page count allows me to be more generous with the production of that time.
Yes.
So I could be sitting there tinkering with one sentence and I'm wrestling with this sentence the whole time. And I finally get it. And it's an hour has passed. I'm like, okay, I wrote one sentence. I wrote one sentence. I was in the work every day. I just make it a thing to be in the work every day. Or it could be like, man, this is flowing and I've written 2-3 pages today. I think first and foremost, and everyone has a different process. I like to just blitz through that first draft and then go back and slow the frick down when it comes to looking at each sentence, and my
Right,
progress
right.
is like stunted. And some people I've interacted with to make sure one sentence is just right before moving on. And I guess that's what I was getting at the beginning, is like, until you get into a writing habit and find out what works for you and what doesn't, you try all these different frameworks and these different ways of doing things, you're not really going to know
Yes,
what works
sir.
for you. And so what works for Stephen King might not work for you. You may want to just set aside an hour a day and get as much as you want done. Or maybe that word goal is great as long as it doesn't take over like you said, the content. But I found for me that setting aside that time allows me to be more generous with the production, allows me to focus more on the story than just reaching a goal or reaching a word count.
Okay, okay. So I know with all the wealth of information that you have, what do you have available to anybody that would like to learn from you?
Yeah. So right now, the easiest way to learn from me is either to follow my TikTok or to go to writeperfectsentences.com, where you'll find a place where you can put in your email and you subscribe to my what I call the Saturday Sentence newsletter. And there I'm giving away all of my sentence structure tips and tricks and giving away all I know on how to write sentences that actually impact your audience and write sentences that are quote unquote perfect, so you can get them to a publishable level. So if you want to follow me, that's the best way to do so.
Okay, okay. So before we close out, any advice for struggling authors that have great ideas but having slightly a hard time formulating those ideas to at least get the story going?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? So I think one, ultimately be writing. So like even if the muse isn't striking you and you're not getting, you're feeling stuck, still set aside time to write. Two, learn from others. So subscribe to my course. Listen to other authors. How do they do things? How do they structure their novels? How do they craft characters? How do they edit sentences and create sentences and take their ideas and actually put them onto a page that impacts the reader? Learn formally in that way. And what we've talked about, read others' work and see how they're writing, how they're structuring their sentences, how they're crafting their characters. And I think if you're sitting down to write, if you're constantly learning, if you're being mindful, if you're reading, then you can start to move the needle. There's no there's no take this pill and all of a sudden you'll be able to write a novel. It's like
Right.
it's basic. It's a difficult work. It's basic. It's you sit down, you write, you learn, you read, you get feedback, you edit, you revise, you continue to edit and revise, but until it's ready, quote unquote. But there's no secret formula, I don't think. There's ways that which you could help yourself, but ultimately it's just about sitting down, doing the work and getting it done. It's basic, but it's hard. And that's why you need these other, like, to learn and to be a part of community that to help you get through.
My man, my man. Look, listeners out there, Cade's information will be in the show notes. His information definitely will be in the show notes. Cade, my man, look, from the bottom of my heart, sir, thank you so much for appearing on the podcast. When I tell you that you are, and I'm not, this is no hype, right? This is from the heart. What you do is so needed because
Mm.
I've been doing this 20 years, not necessarily the podcast, right? But I've been self-publishing going on 20 years, give or take 2 or 3 years here or there. Nonetheless, to get started, to have the mindset to look at your work and be like, "And this is not good enough." It's so many obstacles that goes through a self-published author's first time out. I think what you do will help a person get over that hurdle much quicker and understand that, like you said, it's hard, but it's doable.
Yeah.
We'll concede that it's hard, but it's doable. And once you do it enough, you start to do it right, your books
Mhm.
will literally sell themselves. If you think
Yeah.
about it, Stephen King does not have this big marketing. I write a book. Of course, he gets into the front of the bookstore because he's Stephen King, but his doggone readers know once a book drops, I'm going to buy it. Why? Because it's guaranteed to be a great story because of his previous work. And
Yeah.
as long as you do the work, as long as you perfect your craft. Now, granted, nothing's perfect, but as long as you perfect your craft, and I hope the listeners
Mhm.
get what I'm saying, the readers will follow you from that point forward. Kate, my
Absolutely.
man, is any closing words before we get out of here?
No, thank you, DK, for having me on this podcast. I think you have a great resource for published, self-published authors out there. I've enjoyed listening to a lot of your episodes and I've gleaned a lot of wisdom from them and a lot of wisdom from you today. So I'm just humbled and thankful that you've had me on this podcast. And yeah,
You'll be back.
it's been
Yeah,
a pleasure.
you'll probably be like, man, if you don't leave me alone and cut me a check.
Hey, happy to return whatever, man.
Yeah, you would definitely be back because, like I said earlier, what you have to share is much needed, and I think more unions need to be made within self publishing. Right, what I do, what
Mm,
you do, what Jennifer does. I think we all need to come together and I guess be like a guiding light to show other authors, not competition. You have so many readers, right? So
yeah.
there's so many ways to help people to get their books out. right?
Absolutely.
So it's not one correct way. So be open to all people. With that being said, if you listen to this show on Apple, leave me a review. If you're watching this on iTunes, make sure that you subscribe to my channel. With that being said, I'll see you good people next week. Peace.
This episode of Listen Up, I Got a Story to Tell podcast has ended. But please be sure to subscribe for more literary strategies and tactics to help you create the profitable, successful author career you've always wanted. And don't forget to rate and leave a review so we can continue to bring you the best author and book-related content. See you on the next episode.